Yeah, hi, my name is Patrick, Sitka Sun, and here I've been doing an interview and
Did you record any of the music in here?
No, I did not record any of the music here at this location.
Mm-hmm.
Where I did record it was in Ithaca, New York.
Okay.
It was kind of a long-term collaboration project with a friend of mine, Angelo Peters, and members of the Big Mean Sound Machine, which is a group that plays upstate New York and tours all around.
Okay.
But there were some close friends of mine that I was, tight with when I lived in Ithaca, New York.
Yeah.
And basically, we started a project that was, intended, to be kind of my material, and I basically brought them some seeds of some songs to the table, and over the period of it was about 3 years of recording that record, and it was really nice to be able to put it on the shelf for 6 months at a time, and then come back and listen to it, and even some of the mixing process and stuff like that was we were able to put it down for a little while, and then come back to it and really hear it with fresh ears, and I think that was a piece of what made the recording nice,
Nice. So did you use the computer? Did you use 2-inch reels? Did you use?
We used we went to the computer. We used Logic to record it, and it actually happened in a multiple home studios. So it was we had all the instruments and the nice microphones, and there were a few different studio setups that record was recorded on.
Oh, really?
All with the same people, but when people moved, the studio had to move too.
And that's awesome.
So yeah, that was kind of the process there.
Okay. That's interesting. But I would have thought it would have been one consistent room.
Yeah.
From the recordings.
And some of it was track live, and some of it was overdubs and everything like that, of course.
Yeah.
But
did you get a prime engineer to do it, or?
It was just kind of in our own community,
Oh,
It was
really? Wow.
where we were living. I had known these guys for a long time, and it was just what we did. It was record records, and
Yeah.
it was a real it was a cool friendship kind of community with those musicians, and Angelo helped me produce it and did the mixing of the record, and it was his studio, so it was really he played a pretty big role in helping shape the sound of the music.
Wow. Okay. So shaping the sound of the music, let's talk about the influences behind the music.
Right.
Major influences.
A lot of my background, I come from a background of blues and jazz, and I did the college circuit of studying jazz and classical music through there. That's what I was doing in Ithaca, and so coming up listening to jazz heavyweights and stuff like that, obviously the big ones like John Coltrane and all that, and when I discovered Wayne Shorter, that really started moving things around for me into a deeper understanding of what I liked in the aesthetic of jazz. And so there's that influence paired with my I don't know, just the natural psychedelic rock generation of coming up, that I always really loved. And there was a certain time I was exposed to Fela Kuti at an early age, and that always played a real central role in my upbringing of music. Kind of discovered a lot of things right around the 15 to 16-year-old land, and Fela was one of them, as well as the jazz journey. So I definitely started digging into more African music, and got a few compilations that I really was just blown away by, and started digging into music in that direction. But then also coming from the jazz world, it also translated over with a lot of the Brazilian music and the Cuban music, and that was kind of like where I started branching off from like my more traditional jazz upbringing. Was I started listening to like Cuban music and the music of Brazil, and which still plays a big role in where I'm at today.
Okay.
You know, like understanding those rhythms and everything like that was like really important to my growth as a bass player and as a musician.
Was there any like Ethiopian or Nigerian, like other Nigerian artists?
Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. You know, yeah, a lot of the Ethiopics and stuff like that was really huge on you know, my listening, and even to this day. I mean, I just picked up a record, you know, of I think it's right here. What is it? The Cairo Jazz Band. It's actually presents Egyptian jazz, and this is like a full-on big band.
Yeah.
You know, like in the American style of like a you know 1920s swing band, playing it all like these you know Egyptian and you know that type of music. It's really great. And so like moving into like that kind of music has just been a continuous journey, you know.
Okay.
And I still take a lot of influence from that.
Okay. Cool. So let's go back to the name. So just in case we didn't get it.
Oh right, totally.
So Sitka Sun.
Yeah, Sitka Sun comes from the Sitka spruce tree that grows up the Pacific Northwest, and in addition to being one of the largest trees that you know grows on Earth, it's also used in instrument building, and it's because of its long straight grain that it has is a really good tone wood. It's very good. It's flexible as well as being really strong. So you know I really appreciated the like dynamic of that, you know, because it's a really flexible wood, makes it good for tone wood, but it's good, like if it's going to be used all the time, it's got to be durable too. And so those two strengths I thought were really cool. And they also use it in the masts for sailboats and ships, because you know as the wind goes and pulls it along, it's got to be able to flex with the wind and everything like that, but it can't break. And so that kind of property, you know, and paired with the you know the cycles of the sun and how human beings keep track of time and live and how it affects the earth, I thought was a nice cycle to bring, you know, into a musical adventure.
Okay. So we spoke about the process, the duration of the creation of the record, but we didn't talk about like the kind of like how you begin and how you end with the song, because some people, they know the whole aspect of it first and then they break down little parts or something.
Right.
You know.
Definitely.
What's your process?
My process is really comes from the initial of just like getting into the studio and getting like, I'm a big fan of just like get yourself into the studio and start working. Like no matter what it is, you know, just get in there and just see how it starts, what starts to flow.
Okay.
You know, and a lot of times if I'm really going in intentionally, I start with like a vision of kind of like where I want the song to be, you know, like there's a certain track, Desert, second track on the record.
Right.
You know, that's kind of like a very, like, you can put yourself in the place of that. And so I'll start by putting myself in a place that I want to be or that I feel. And then I'll just start recording, you know, just like I oftentimes start with just the bass. And I'll start with a bass groove and I'll kind of like feel out a few different things. And then I'll stop and I'll listen back and you know, collect my data of my inspiration. And then I'll start sampling myself.
Okay.
And I'll take that groove that's close to where I'm feeling, and then I'll start layering on myself of like, you know, I'll put the guitars on, and then, or I'll like put a drum sample on that's close to what I hear, and I'll start just sampling and just like leave it playing and just like walk around the room for a little while and like vibe out on it, and then take next steps and be like, okay, it needs this, and then, you know, kind of evaluate as I go and take it as a session like that. And you know, sometimes you come up with something great, sometimes you come up with like, you know, you listen to it the next day and you're like, oh man, that's garbage, what was I thinking, you know? But you know, more often than not, then you can really like just like as long as you get in there and do something, the inspiration starts to flow when you stay curious about it. Okay. And that's like something that I try to embody in like both my live playing and in my studio work, is just like maintaining a sense of curiosity. And usually the truth will start to come through from there.
I see.
And
that's interesting.
Yeah, and so, but you know, so that's like the stage one. And so say I get something that I'm like really into and I'm liking, you know, I'll start trying to feel out the form and the transitions and be like, okay, this goes like this and this, you know, transitions into here. Yeah. How does this sound? And try out a few things on the computer and like, you know, with the sampling style. And after I've really like figured out the structure of the song and everything like that and how I want it to sound, I'll go back into the step of writing sheet music for the ensemble. Okay. And so I'll write out a full chart of the music, how I want it to sound in like true notation. Okay. And then I'll be able to get it ready for the band to be able to play live and everything like that. And that's kind of like my full cycle of writing and performing. You know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it starts like, you know, it kind of starts in like, you know, I'm kind of a traditionalist in a lot of ways, you know, like upright bass player and like I kind of appreciate that lifestyle and everything like that. And but I've like, you know, I really do embrace like, you know, using some of the technology that's available with the, you know, sample machines and stuff like that, just to get your ideas together. Yeah. You know, I really appreciate big band writing. You know, I played a big band around town, and I really appreciate that music. Yeah. And from that, I really think that sampling and stuff like that is just like an arranger's dream. You know, you can like really hear back right away all the transitions of how you want things to go, and then you can evaluate it and view it from an arranger's perspective. Yeah. And then create something that could be a live moment.
New record.
Yeah, so I've been working on some material for that. Have probably half of what I want to put on it down and set up. And that'll still be working with Long Road Society record label. Nice. And you know, they've been really great to me, pushing the record and everything like that, and been a really positive for us, you know, pushing it forward.
So the last record was limited, right, to a certain amount of copies?
Well, we pressed 300 copies off the bat, and we are going to repress the record. And one thing to note for all the record heads out there, the first 300 copies, the center on the record, the center logo on the actual record is in like a deep gold color, and the next pressing will not have that. Okay. So that'll be the first 300 copies. You'll know that's one of them.
The original. Yeah. For all the record nerds.
Yeah, totally. Which I might want to be.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah. So funny how little things like that are key.
Oh, they're great. Yeah. You live for that kind of stuff, you know.
I also wanted to talk about the actual like record and how it's like heavy cardboard, the wheat paste paper.
Right.
Who thought that was a good idea to do?
Definitely. So that was definitely Long Road Society helped through pushing through all the design and everything like that. And it was this guy Morgan Nixon and Lisa Bazzino that I really worked closely with in doing the whole design. And Morgan especially was like, we need to do the tip-on jacket for this record, you know. And I was just like, yeah, you know, the sturdier the better, you know, the more of a piece that it can be and like feels in the hand is really good. And we went through a lot of design. I did the whole back design and the cover design with Lisa. And you know, I didn't really expect off the bat for it to be like so much of a matte kind of finish on the front, and I'm really pleased with how it came out and how it feels. You know, we got the record and I was like, ooh, I was like, I didn't totally like know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, totally.
But when we like got it in hand, we were like, oh, this feels good. All right. Okay.
I initially thought it was a reissue because of the the way it was made. 'Cause a lot of people, they just do the thin white keyboard. Cardboard.
Right.
You know, the one that they the glue on. That's all one piece. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah. So it takes a lot more effort to even understand where that originally is from. You know, like how the original records were made.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
yeah, we were really pleased with the way that it came out and everything like that.
I mean, the only people that I do know that do that is like Daptone and like the other like retro soul records that come out.
Right. Yeah. And I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you write other parts for it? Do you play other instruments?
Yeah, I started off when I was young, like every other 12-year-old kid, playing guitar. And that was where I really like fell in love with music, was like learning guitar and coming up. And there came a point when I was involved at a young age in the blues circuit outside of Boston and in Boston. It was like, in order to work, you needed to be a bass player. And I started playing bass for this band just because like that was what we needed. And sure enough, I was like, man, I think I like this.
Yeah.
And after a little while, I decided, I was like, okay, if I'm gonna be a bass player, then I'm gonna play upright bass.
Okay.
And I sold my baritone saxophone for my first upright bass. Wow. And that's how I got into it. Okay. Started playing like that, taking some lessons, and really ran with the jazz world, and then into the classical world as well, that I also really appreciate.
Okay. So do you have any like bass heroes?
Bass heroes. Yeah, I got Charles Mingus. Okay. Charles Mingus sitting up there, keeping a watchful eye.
Yeah.
And Charles Mingus is definitely one of my favorites. Obviously, love guys like Ron Carter and Ray Brown, and just like the jazz greats. Is really like where I and like there's also the classical world, guys like Gary Carr, and even my bass professor Nick Walker, who's just a fantastic bass player. In speaking of bass players, I also really appreciate the community behind the upright bass. There's the International Society of Bassists, which is just a great organization of bass players all over the world, and it's like getting involved in some of that, even around the Bay Area, has just been like a really great community. And Gary Carr was the guy that founded it in 1966, I think. And he's just another great bass player and a good human, and the whole organization has done a lot for the bass world.
Okay. Are you into like the spiritual jazz, like Richard Davis? Like,
absolutely.
Cecil McBee. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just picked up a record over there. I forget what his name is. Mel Waldron.
Yeah.
Kind of like a, I don't know, I just didn't know, I'd heard the name and knew that he was kind of out, and then like wanted to check it, and I dig him. Nice. That's my most recent discovery in the kind of like outer jazz fringe,
left field.
A little left field out there. And I can really appreciate that. I mean, Yusuf Lateef was a really big influence on me as well. Discovering him, I was in my I think I was 21.
There's a lot of Eastern influence as well.
And the Eastern, and just the Eastern, the whole, spirituality and everything like that is like definitely played a role in my personal and spiritual life. And, pair that with jazz, I always thought that was a really cool, combination that I resonated with. And, there's always like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. That's a huge influence in the jazz world on just like the combos that he would put together of those musicians were really a firing jazz ensemble.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you spoke a little bit about your spiritual influences. Is that something that you kind of like put into your music at all?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that some of it translates. You know, that's definitely a piece of, you know, the music is instrumental and it's meant to be like digested, you know, and like, you know, even on the record we, you know, say it's good for long drives and like, you know, contemplative time. And like, you know, I think a lot of people in their spiritual world, I think, you know, having the peace to be able to contemplate things, you know, peace within yourself and with the situations that arise in your life, you know, being able to harness a good practice of that, I think is important, and I hope that the music will provide space for that. You know.
Yeah. So for making music, I like to call it like the itch. You know, you get like an itch for it.
Definitely.
Talk about like, when do you get an itch? Is it just random? Is it like something that like is ongoing, inspiring? Like I can do this particular thing, and that itch will come immediately or whatever.
Yeah, you know, I do. The itch really comes for me when I'm just in the habit of seeing and experiencing music all the time. Like I'm just coming out. I'm in one of those phases right now. I just came back from a trip. I was on the East Coast for 10 days, and I saw so much music while I was over there. And just like it's, you know, for me it comes in all forms. You know, the itch. You know, but but at the same time, the musical it definitely comes from me when I'm just like in it and like seeing a lot of music or like experiencing, you know, you get a few new records that really like set you off, and all of a sudden you're just like start thinking like, you know, you just hear it and it just like comes a little bit easier, you know. And there's always times of where like, you know, you have periods where you're not inspired, but like, you know, that like in any period of non-inspiration, you know that another one's coming, you know. And
it's building up.
And like I'm definitely a proponent of like, you know, whether you feel good that day or not, like just get in and do something, you know, and let that curiosity that we were talking about earlier, kind of let that take over to it. And then, you know, usually if you trust in that, you'll come up with something that's like, you know, you think's pretty cool.
Cool, man. So I see you have a record collection. How long have you been record collecting?
You know, I've been record collecting in a serious way since I moved here about 2.5 years ago. You know, I had always had like a few records and everything like that, and was always on the hunt for new music and discovering stuff through friends and however. But part of my shift into like a new living situation and world, I was like, yeah, that's something that, you know, I want to dig into, and you know, I started collecting a lot of blues records. You know, I started really trying to view it as going back to my roots of like how I started playing music. You know, and I, you know, inevitably discovered all of like the Oakland blues. So then I went through a phase of finding every like Oakland and Bay Area blues artist that I could, and you know, delving into just like enjoying the process of like finding little niches to like dig into. And you know, I've collected a fair amount of jazz records and just about primarily Jamaican reggae music is like what I collect. You know, and I just really appreciate that music for all that it is. You know, I love dub, and like I hope that influence shows through Sitka Sun. You know, I really love you know, just the you know, the culture of having like a single and then like a version on the back, and you know, just like it is like record culture. It's like it's some nerdy stuff, you know, and totally. It's really interesting to me. And you know, it's like my collecting Jamaican vinyl is like my way of paying respect to the music. The first track on the B side, Sugar Butter. And the intro for that is a line that I just like really feel like I could play for a long time, especially the way it sounds on the record. It sounds great. Like, So that's a little bit of the intro to that song there.